Good morning, church. Great to have you with us here this morning. You know, it occurred to me as I was setting up the camera to film this today that after this Sunday, we've only got 2 more Sundays where we'll be completely online. After that, we'll be doing the welcome and the notices and everything in person, in real life, in Unit 11. How exciting is that? We've had a brilliant week this week. Our Make Lunch team have been working with the Churches Together group, doing picnic lunches for families in the town. We had an amazing time. It was very hot on the Wednesday. Thursday, when I was serving, was thankfully a bit cooler. But it was wonderful to be able to bless those families with a picnic lunch and some fun activities. So well done everyone who served as part of that team. And we're looking forward to seeing what we're going to be able to do over the summer holidays. But right now, let's turn our hearts and our minds to God, to worshipping Him and to lifting Him up in our praises as we sing.
Solid gold, like a vow that is tested, like a covenant of old, and your love is enduring through the winter rain and beyond the horizon, with mercy for today. Faithful you have been, and faithful you will be. Yourself to me, and it's why I sing. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. You father the orphan, your kindness makes us whole, and you shoulder our weakness, and your strength becomes our own. Now you're making me like you, clothing me in white, bringing beauty from ashes. For you will have your bride, free of all her guilt, and rid of all her shame, and known by her true name. And it's why I sing. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy and it's why I sing. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips.
Thank you, band, for leading us in that time of worship. A few notices this morning. Just another reminder that in preparation for getting back to our in-person services, we're asking all the members of the church to fill out that survey saying how you want to be involved, how you want to serve on Sunday. So if you haven't already filled out that survey, it will be in Pastors News again this Monday, but that's your last opportunity to fill it out, because this week we will be putting together the teams and starting to work on all of that. So thank you to everyone who's done that already. If you haven't filled in the survey yet, please pop on there as soon as possible and let us know how you want to be part of things. We also shared with you last week about our church weekend at the Jarman Centre. Here's a quick reminder of that.
Clara, what are you doing?
I'm setting up my tent in preparation for the Jarman Centre weekend away.
What? Why did you want to go camping at the Jarman Church?
Well, I think it's a really great opportunity to get together as a family would, and just hang out together after this past year. Now we can, it's just a great opportunity to hang out.
Okay, but I'm looking at your tent there, Clara, and I don't think you're going to fit any kitchen stuff in there, so what are you going to do about food?
Well, I think if everyone brings their own, or I could run down to the fish and chip shop or order takeaway. It's quite relaxed, really.
And what if it rains?
Well, it's actually raining now, and I think the lounge area is available, so we can all pile on in there. Or if someone has a better tent, I might just gate crash in their tents.
What are we actually going to do with all of that time over the weekend?
Well, I'm just going to sit down and relax. I'm sure that there's people that will want to play games together. There'll be organised activities for children and bonfires, campfire songs, and I think it's just a great idea for everyone to bring activities and just all get together.
That's great. Well, it's starting to rain a bit more heavily now, so we're going to go inside and look at more of the details and leave you out here.
Okay, bye!
I really hope that lots of us are going to be able to gather at the Jarman Centre for that weekend as an opportunity to just be together, to properly catch up and enjoy each other's company. If you do want to camp, you must let us know, so you can email admin@newmarketcommunitychurch.co.uk so that we can save you a camping pitch. But you're equally welcome just to pop in during the day and join us for however long you're able. We'd love to see you there. The other bit of news: last week we announced our next church news evening, which is for sharing details about what our Sunday service is going to look like in person and all the plans for that. We told you last week that that was going to be on Sunday the 13th of June, and then having announced that, it occurred to us that the government aren't announcing their final decision until Monday the 14th, the day after, so we're not going to be able to tell you very much on Sunday the 13th. So we're just going to postpone that meeting for 1 week. That meeting will now be on Sunday the 20th of June from 7 p.m. It will be on Zoom, and there will be a link coming out in the weekly email. So do join us for that. We'll share all the details of how things are going to look for in-person services, and you'll be able to ask questions, and hopefully we'll all come away feeling ready and confident and excited for our in-person meetings. But now it's time to continue our sermon series, Are You Sitting Uncomfortably? And this week we're looking at the topic of addiction. And we've got a guest speaker for you. A great friend of mine, Casey, who I've known for quite a few years now. He's been part of the Plumline Ignite network that we're part of for much longer than I have. I first met Casey back at one of the Represent camps that we did a few years back when he was helping on the kids' work with us, and he's an awesome guy, and I've already heard his message that he's recorded for us, and I think you're going to find it really powerful and encouraging, and I think it's going to touch a lot of hearts. So let's hear from Casey, who works in addiction recovery.
Hi church, my name is Casey, and Claire asked me to come and talk to you today about an uncomfortable truth. The uncomfortable truth that I want to talk about is addiction. So I'm going to start with a verse from the Bible. It's Luke 6, verse 20. And Jesus says, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God." So in looking at this uncomfortable truth of addiction, I'm going to do three things. I'm going to tell you a story about a brilliant, fantastic woman who I met named Kath. As well as her story, I'm going to give you some facts about addiction, and I'm going to give you some Bible verses, and hopefully all together it'll paint a picture of what God's heart toward addiction is. Kath needed to leave home. She knew she couldn't be with her family anymore. So she was living out on the streets in Nottingham. It was dangerous, and so she reckoned she needed to find someone to try to protect her. And so she found the toughest, hardest, biggest guy she could, and she paired up with him. This guy was big, and he could fight, but unfortunately, Kath was one of the people who he fought, and he did beat her up. She told me about the time that he broke her jaw, that he broke and knocked out about 5 teeth from her mouth, and she was left with these exposed nerve endings that were really painful. This is just one of the things that happened to Kath while she was living on the street, trying to survive. Her partner forced her to use heroin the first time. The last time he tried to get her to use heroin, she knew that she would overdose, that they would both overdose if they did. And she tried to talk him out of it, but he wasn't having any of it. Fortunately, there was a charity worker nearby. There was someone in the area who literally saved her, literally rescued her by getting her away from him. And this is when she started her new route, her new road, her new part of her story to recovery. Addiction facts. Addiction is not a character flaw. Addiction is not a moral weakness. This has been established since the 1950s by the experts in the medical community, but still it's pretty common with lay people. It's pretty commonly held view that, oh well, if somebody really cared about the family, they wouldn't do this to them. If somebody really cared about what was right or wrong, they wouldn't do this. But addiction really isn't based on those things, as has been established for many years now. And I'll show some of what really is behind addiction. That it's not someone's morality, it's not someone's character that's in question. In fact, addiction is caused by abuse, trauma, neglect. And that's especially true when they're young and when their brain is still developing. And if something that should have happened doesn't happen, otherwise known as neglect, then that too is especially important when a baby or a child is still developing. We know that if someone isn't given the right nourishment, then their brain wouldn't be able to develop properly. We know that if someone isn't given the right kind of nourishment, then their bodies won't develop properly. But here's a few examples of the kind of effects that neglect can have on someone's brain developing, and this in turn contributes to them being susceptible to addiction. There's a really simple thing here called bonding. So bonding is what happens between a parent and a child, between a baby and a mother or a father, or even someone else who's the primary caregiver. And this bonding, I think intuitively we can see that this is important for someone to grow up secure and strong, and to know that the world is a safe place, to get a secure attachment, as they call it. But the bonding does more than just psychological things, more than symbolic things. The bonding that happens between a baby or a child and an adult is important physiologically. So what happens when bonding occurs, there's a thing called attunement. So attunement is, say, when the parent looks into the eyes of the child, and maybe the child smiles at the parent, and the parent communicates to the child through the look, through the eyes, not even through language. This happens before language is even developed in the baby. But what's communicated is things like, I see you, I hear you, I'm here, you're not alone, and even you're okay. So in the process of bonding, when this attunement happens, the parent is modeling how to soothe oneself, how to calm oneself down, and how to cope with difficult emotions. So this modeling helps the child to learn how to handle emotions and to calm itself down. But the neurology and the biochemistry, the nerve connections in the brain that help and that work for calming oneself down, the brain physiology that's needed with stress, dealing with anxiety, handling emotions, making good decisions, delaying gratification. These sorts of skills, these sorts of things have been found to happen in certain parts of the brain. Certain parts of the brain are important for making good decisions. And if a baby isn't nurtured and doesn't bond at a young age, then these parts of the brain that help with these functions will be underdeveloped. So this is why addiction has a physiological aspect, and it has a lot to do with what happens in the first 3 years of life, the care that one's given. Another example of how we need emotional nurturing in order to physiologically develop strong and healthy is a thing called serve and return. So when the parent and the child, when the adult and the baby are interacting, there's a thing that happens. You could watch it and you could probably think about seeing it yourself. The baby will smile and the parent will smile back. The adult will make a noise and the baby will make a noise back or acknowledge it. So there's this serve and return between the two where one does something and the other one responds. And that interplay between the two has been shown in studies, not only emotionally, but physiologically, that helps to cultivate, again, the brain and the parts of the brain that helps for someone to grow up to be strong and secure in their mental health. It's what's needed for someone to grow up to not be susceptible to addiction. So Kath is off the streets. She's relatively safe, and she starts the next stage of her recovery. She's offered a course, and she takes it, and she finishes this course, and she really enjoys having the certificate that she's given. And the way she describes it to me later, with her awesome sense of humor, is she said, "I got this certificate for learning how to switch on and switch off a computer." She thrived on the affirmation and the encouragement from doing these courses, getting these certificates, and realizing that she can learn, that she can do this. So she takes more courses and she does more learning. Before long, she's volunteering and she's helping other people. In the process of all this, she'd had a son, and her son had been taken away from her because she was unable to care for him while she was using heroin, while she was homeless. And so her determination and her passion is that she wants to do what she can to have a relationship with her son. She wants him to know that she loves him. She wants him to know that she's there. So she starts writing out the pages by hand and longhand of the children's book that she used to read to him when he was young, while they were still together. Don't know if any of you are old enough or if they still have the book out called Goosebumps. We used to read that to our kids. Well, Kath would write out longhand pages and pages of the Goosebumps stories that she remembered reading to her son. She would mail it to him so that he knew that she was there. He knew that she still loved him. And she worked really hard to jump through all the hoops and do everything that was needed for the authorities to be able to give her access to see her son again. And this was a long, arduous, difficult process. There was no guarantees. It wasn't easy, but she was focused and she would not give up on working to be able to reestablish connection with her son. So Kath is doing well in her recovery regarding her addiction. But what is going on? What is addiction recovery? Well, one thing that addiction recovery is, physiologically speaking, is it's to do with neuroplasticity. It would be far too simple to say that addiction is a bad habit and the way to overcome addiction is to get some good habits to replace them. But neuroplasticity helps to explain it a little bit better than that. Maybe you've heard the stories of people who've survived car crashes where they had a really unusual brain injury where a whole part of their brain was no longer functioning. And the person would be fine in some respects, but they couldn't talk anymore, or they couldn't walk. The person could learn to talk again or learn to walk again. The brain could rewire and create new connections to a part of the brain that still worked. And that is a really good way of describing neuroplasticity. In someone who struggles with addiction, recovery is about us learning new ways of coping with pain, and developing and building and strengthening new neural connections for making good decisions. Building new neural connections that help us to delay gratification, to delay pleasure, to live with pain. The habit or the tendency to isolate and just to be on our own, to try to do things ourselves. Neuroplasticity is part of what happens when we practice reaching out, we practice connecting. And this is a good time to mention another thing that's really important in addiction recovery, maybe the most important thing. Psychologists have a term called unconditional positive regard. And unconditional positive regard, is a bit like it sounds. It's practice or the ability to think positively, to act positively, especially toward ourselves, regardless of what happens. So I'll make a mistake and I can cope with it. I can still be kind to myself. I can still give myself a break when I mess up. That's unconditional positive regard in a really simple way. To be kind to myself no matter what, that's something that I've heard before. That sounds familiar. It sounds like something I've learned in church. Unconditional love. Unconditional positive regard is really, in my mind, love. Agape love. The kind of love that God gives us. The kind of love that God helps us to show toward other people. Grace, forgiveness. All these things that make up love are really foundational, really, really important to addiction recovery. And the people who I've seen recover the best are people who learn to love themselves, to learn to accept the love that they deserve, the love that they are worthy of having, and then be able to relate to other people in a loving way. In Matthew 25:35 and 36, Jesus says, "I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me with help and ministering care. I was in prison, and you came to me, ignoring personal danger." Not everyone who uses drugs become addicted to drugs. In Vietnam, there was a lot of soldiers who were using heroin. And of those who were fortunate enough to make it home alive, they looked and they recorded how many continued to use heroin once they got back. Now, if you looked at the statistics of success in an addiction recovery service, a treatment center, you would hope to get 50% success. And if you did better than 50%, you'd be doing very well. This is how difficult, how deep, and how challenging addiction recovery is. But the Vietnam soldiers who were using heroin, who went back to their homes afterward, who went back to their lives, went back to work, went back to communities and family, 95% of them did not go back to using heroin, did not continue using heroin when they left Vietnam. And no treatment center has ever been able to boast anywhere near that kind of success rate. So what does that tell us? I think that if 95% of the people who were using heroin in Vietnam were able to stop using heroin when they left Vietnam, when they went back home, I think that shows that a great proportion of the people who were using heroin were not addicts. They did not have the underlying condition or the underlying circumstances that make someone susceptible to addiction. So the difficulty of being in Vietnam wasn't enough to make everyone an addict, and the using of heroin itself was not enough to make everyone an addict. 5% continued to use heroin when they got back home, and perhaps those are people who do suffer from addiction, but 95% of the people stopped. So before I finish Kath's story, I want to go back a bit further. Remember how I said that she had this man who was supposed to take care of her, who beat her? Well, that wasn't the first trauma that she had, and maybe it wasn't the worst. Because even to this day, when Kath sleeps at night, she finds these very comforting. She has light bulbs that she keeps in her bedside table. And the reason why she does that is because when she was a child, her father used to take the light bulbs out of the sockets in her room and in the house. He'd take all the light bulbs out of the sockets, and then he would make her watch horror films. He would make her watch scary movies. And he did all this to frighten her, to try to make sure she never told anyone what he did to her in her bedroom. So this is the kind of trauma that laid the foundation for her to run away from home, for her to live on the streets, and for her to find comfort in heroin. But fortunately, that's not where the story ended. Psalm 145 says, "The Lord is kind, gracious, and compassionate, slow to anger, and great in faithful love, abounding in mercy and loving kindness." I told you about how she left home and lived on the streets. She got beaten up. She got into using heroin. I told her how she got off the streets and she got into recovery. And then I went back and told you about the trauma and the abuse that she had had at home and why she had ran away from home, why she left and was willing to live on the streets. But what ended up happening? Well, when I heard all this story from Kath, she was sitting in her office because she was the manager who was running the drug and alcohol services in one of the areas in our county. So she's not only recovered and not only volunteering, but she's now helping as a manager to support other people who support those in recovery. So she went from being a volunteer to being paid and then promoted to being a manager, looking after the staff and volunteers who support people in addiction recovery. And of course, she has empathy, she has passion, she has patience that only comes from having been through this stuff herself. So what about her son? When I was in Kath's office, she pulled out her phone and she showed me his graduation photo from uni. And there was her son in his cap and his gown, looking so proud. But next was Kath. And she was, of course, like any parent, far prouder and far more excited than anyone else about her son having graduated from uni. And she told me that going to see him graduate was not a small thing. Although they had restored and repaired their relationship, and they had a great relationship, the two of them. She just got her license not long before. So it was a pretty big deal for her to drive all the way to where his graduation was. But she did it. And she had a conversation with the staff at the university in charge of the graduation. She rang them and she said, when my son's name is called, would I be allowed to whoop, please? And they said, pardon? Whoop. She said, will I be able to say, woo, whoop? And they said, yes, you may whoop. So whoop, Kath did when her son's name was called out at his graduation. So they have a beautiful relationship now, Kath and her son. She's working in recovery. The people who work for the agency that rescued her off the streets that time, that's an organization called Women's Aid. And Kath is actually on the board for Women's Aid now. Again, she's giving back and she's helping in the places where she was helped. And she said that she's very happy for me to share her story. If one person is helped by it, then it'll be worth her telling me and her sharing her story. When he came to Nazareth, where he'd been brought up, Jesus went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release of captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor."
You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears are drowned in perfect love. You rescued me and I will stand and sing. I am a child of God. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears are drowned in perfect love. You rescued me and I will stand and sing. I am a child of God. I am a child of God. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
Well, that's the end of our time together this morning, guys. Only 2 more Sundays online and then we will be together in person. Prayer meeting on Zoom this evening at 7 o'clock if you'd like to join us. Don't forget, if you haven't filled out that survey about Sunday serving, get that done first thing tomorrow so that we can get the teams organised. Have a blessed week and we'll see you again soon. Bye!